Hey, we are live. Hi, everyone. This is the Mercedes Lucke Benedict show, and I have an amazing guest with me tonight, Mr. John Carricks. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing good, but when you said all that about an amazing guest, I was waiting to see who it was myself.
Oh,
But
you
thank you
know
for
what?
that. That's very nice. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, that's wonderful. You know what? I've only been texting with you, but you have a funny side to you already. I'm noticing you're a funny personality. You're fun.
I know. I wouldn't make a living on it. Let's put it that way. We used to call that, being a regular commodian.
Okay, that one got me. Well, I'm so happy you're here, and I want to thank Kadrosha. So she is a really sweet lady, and she kind of set this up. So I'm really excited. The more I kept researching you, and I apologize because we did audience. We were supposed to have him on a couple of weeks ago, and then I was sick. So now here we are, and he is back, and we have so much to talk about. And I have a whole list of questions.
Well, we can
that
talk whatever you want about whatever you want. You can deviate. You told me yourself you had been on a couple interviews that went a little slow, and I
yeah.
do interviews myself, and I always find, for me, the funniest thing is when you get a person and up front they tell you how much they want to talk and like to talk. They're usually the ones that when you get them, then they're there and they don't say anything, and you're like, this is the
and
person that said how much they want to talk, but
yeah, that and then there's that weird pause,
yeah.
like, and you're like,
Yeah, Craig Ferguson used to have it on his show. We used to call that the awkward pause.
yeah, the awkward pause. That's why I try. I mean, I really try to have people on that I know I'm gonna really have a great conversation with. So you have so many things that you do that I resonate with. And I mean, it's almost endless, the list that you are of what you can do. You're a musician, you're a performer, which that's what I am. And I love that. I love that you're on stage, you're performing and you're doing your things, now. And not only that, but you're a writer, you're an amazing writer, and you've got books you've written, you've got blogs, you've got your own show. Um, let's see, there's just uh, you sang at the Grand Ole Opry.
Well,
It
actually, we
just
didn't sing there. We were on a tour there. We didn't sing there, actually.
oh,
We were
but
on
you're
a
on
tour there.
tour. Well, that's so. And then so you played music. So you're
No, we were just on a tour there, and
oh,
I wish I had sang at the Grand Ole Opry. No, I didn't get to do that. I have played a lot of good places though, and I tell you that story's also. Sometimes you go to places that you're really looking forward to play, and it goes horribly wrong. Well,
yeah,
one time me and the band were on tour and we did Vegas, we did LA, and LA was horrible. It was this red carpet thing. All these big people were supposed to be there and they had all these gift bags. And we got to play one song, didn't get paid. Hardly anybody showed up of the A-listers that was supposed to show up. And the last place we went to on this tour was Phoenix. And we pulled into this bar, and it was this little dinky bar, and we're like, oh my God, we're doomed on this whole trip. And we went in there, and they opened up the doors, and they pulled all the furniture out into the parking lot, and they were crowded inside and out, and we got paid. And we're like, we're actually going home with money. But it's funny because some places you can hear about and you can think how cool it would be to play there, and then you play there and it's just a mess. uh Sports events and music events are the kind of things, it's sometimes they fly by the seat of their pants, and at the last minute it's just I'm sure you probably experienced that yourself if you perform, and
I have
it's
had some weird stuff happen. Yes. Wow, but I like, yeah, the thing about getting paid, that's always a good bonus if you can get a little bit of money. I mean, I know it's fun doing stuff you love, but I'm just outside of Phoenix. We're like an hour from Phoenix. So if you ever come through again,
Let you know, yeah, but I can't remember what the name of the club was. Me and my sister had stopped in Phoenix a couple years ago to visit a friend of mine. I'm a member of the Transhumanist Party, which is also a political party, and they look to, you know, one of the big thing is longevity and promoting life and science. And I had actually been a presidential candidate for them in 2020, and one of our big guys lives there in Phoenix, and we visited him a couple years ago there. Uh,
Wow. I
yeah,
thought, well,
Phoenix is
that's
a nice
cool.
place.
Well, so when did you start being a writer? When did you start writing?
Writing, actually, the first book that I had out was, I think it was 1998 or 97, and it was Tai Chi in the Classroom and Beyond. And I've done martial arts since I was 6. And so, you know, and I taught at colleges, and at one time I had as many as 3 karate studios or martial arts studios, shall we say. And so that was a natural thing to do that. And actually, that is one of the books I've actually gotten paid half decent from. I had a co-author who's Dr. Kreider, and he's still actively teaching. He's got tenure at Kutztown University in Kutztown, PA. And our book, Tai Chi in the Classroom Beyond, I think we did three editions of it, and it was used by a couple colleges as a textbook. So we actually got some nice amount of money for that, for being basically unknown publishers. But then once you do a couple editions of it, it kind of hurts you because they're buying the old editions at the bookstore used, and then all of a sudden your money goes. But the book's still out there. Some people I saw selling it for like $400, $500, and it's
Wow.
like, I don't understand how they expect to get that. But that was the first book I did, and then I started doing my. I think you saw out there, Zen. Forget the title, but relaxation through your Zen journey. The title was something like that. You can see the books on Amazon if you put my
Yep.
name in, and it was the idea of a self-help book with some meditation, and every page of the book had a saying on it. And the idea was, you read the saying every day, you go to a different saying, and you write your notes down about what you think about it. So it was kind of the book to get you thinking and get you to start your day with something that might make you relax and think on a subject. And then I had the vision of making it a trilogy. You know, I don't know. It's always nice to have a trilogy, you know, movie trilogy, of this trilogy, of that trilogy.
Yeah.
You know, the number 3 is supposed to be good. So I did one on a Christian saying per day. Same thing for you to meditate on and think on. And I worded in there a little differently about the meditation, because I know some Christian groups don't like meditation. They think that's an evil thing to do. So I didn't stress the meditation as much as contemplation for that, because you have to be careful sometimes how you word things and symbolism you use. So then I did want to make it a trilogy, and I waited a number of years. And then finally, I was off from work for a number of months when I was still working. I'm retired now, though. And I had hip surgery, and I was at home. So my better half had recommended that those books weren't a whole 365 pages. So my better half recommended, why don't you make the new one 365? Actually, have a saying for every day. And my idea of the other ones is, once you do them, you can go back and you just keep reusing it and write notes. You don't have to just use one page one day. So I had time sitting at home, and I did this one. I did on American thought and American quotes. Like, there's quotes in there from Abraham Lincoln, from Benjamin Franklin, from George Washington. So it was. I called this one, stress release in 5 minutes a day with American wisdom. And the cover has red, white, and blue on it and stuff. And it's kind of, so that one, I really like that version. And I do get these people contacting me about, oh, don't you want to have it republished better and go to shows and stuff? But as anybody that's ever written anything knows, there's a bunch of people out there that start sending you phone calls and emails, and they're like, "Oh, well, we're going to waive 80% of the normal fee, and you're only going to pay $3,000, which normally $10,000." Well, that would be 70% anyway. But and really what it's about is them making money. They're making money. They're not going to really do that much for you. And I love the fact that when they call you, they come from all kinds of different phone numbers too. And if it was legitimate, they wouldn't have to come from multiple phone numbers.
Right.
I mean, that's the deterrent right away. So I've gotten the habit. Sometimes they answer the phone, with a voice. Hello, who's there? Sometimes they hang up on you right away. And it's funny though, but you get a lot of that. So that trilogy was a book series I went through, and I kind of like that. So I kind of morphed from the martial art book, Tai Chi in the Classroom and Beyond, which was a self-help book with teaching to focus and also some self-defense techniques in it, and had some meditation into books that were for you to self-grow yourself with quotes and think about them, which is a nice way. Somewhere in the middle during this, I had seen the movie Bonsai. I can't think what the name of the movie was. Something Bonsai, where the guy was a doctor. He was a space pirate. He was all these things. And I wanted to write a book like that. Huh. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. A guy that kind of does everything. So on and off, like a superhero, super guy kind of book. So on and off, I had been doodling notes and started writing this, and I kind of lost that and got sidetracked. Okay. And later on, I picked that back up. Jump in anytime if I keep talking too much. No. But and I had never wrote a big, thicker book. I've also written a bunch of short books. Like, you've been on my blogs. JohnCarrots.com is a exercise blog, health and exercise. CrazyJohnCarrots.com is a travel one with travel things and ideas of that. And the writing those short little things, I like that. So I've written a couple short books also. I've written a book like an intro to Madame Laveau, introduction to Dr. John, which just touches on little bits of their lives and stuff. Okay. And wrote a couple other short books. One karate book I wrote I liked, which was, Be a Force of Nature. It was based on a speech I wrote, and it's about, you go out in life, and it's actually martial arts based. And it's about the fact that you go out in life and you shouldn't just be the one that gets beat down. You should be the force of nature. I mean, you shouldn't beat other people down. That's not the idea, but it's the fact that you should be a force of nature and be strong. Yeah, I know. You gotta be careful how you say that, but that was a short book too that was based on speech, and I like that as a short book. I did another short book on Karawan Apkido Hosen Sul, which was the style I mostly did years ago, my version of self-defense Apkido. Since I've had hip surgery and different things, I really don't do a lot of grappling anymore. So I've kind of gone back into Kempo and some other things. Right now, I'm also a student of Ed Parker Jr. and his Pax Arts, which is the idea that is it's Pax Arts, meaning peace, not martial as in war. Oh. So, and the concept is that most martial arts on a scale of like 1 to 10 with a confrontation starts at 4. But what do you do from that 0 to 4? And an example they always say is if you're at a Christmas party and your Uncle Ted gets a little bit too drunk and carried away, you don't want to break Uncle Ted's nose. You just want to get Uncle Ted put away, that he's not making trouble for himself or anybody else. So that's kind of the idea, So that's what I'm doing right now, which is a good idea, Poor Uncle Ted. You don't want to pick on him. For anybody you don't have an Uncle Ted, do you?
No.
So those are some of my books I like that got out there. But getting back to my bonsai book, I can't remember the name of that. It's a funny movie though, but it's interesting. He's a brain surgeon. He's a pirate. He's a musician. That's it. He's also a brain surgeon. So I thought, how can I attack these books? I've never written a big thick book. So what I started out doing was doing some youth books, which are lighter written, and I did The Adventures of Dr. Jonks, uh, DRJONKZ, which was my gaming name. It was actually abbreviated John Carrots. So
Oh,
Jonks, JONKZ. And that's another lifetime. When I used to do professional gaming, that was my name I used
oh,
first. So I wrote the first book, and it was also a short book, but it was, it was a youth book, so it was easier. It had a couple pictures in it that I made from some generic pictures, and then I did a second book, and then I did a third book. So I had a trilogy of those books, also the Dr. John's Adventures, that were youth books. So they were more, they weren't as detailed as an adult book would be. And
okay.
I did a companion book about a cat and a dog that were in the other books, coming and helping a boy out that was in need and had an accident, and they saved him. So that was a companion book to the Dr. Jonk's Adventures, and that was also a youth. That was aimed for a little younger age group, even also. But
Wow.
then what I did was, I always wanted to do that bigger book. So I went back to the Dr. Jonk's three books, and I did rewrites to make them all a little thicker. As in each book, I added to it and grew it, shall we say, and more detail, a little bit more adult in nature. And then I did a another chapter. So even though the story was wrapped up basically in three books, I went further, which would have been it wouldn't have been a fourth youth book because it was built more, written to be more adult and more detailed.
Hmm.
So then I published that as one thick book, as in the Adventures of Dr. John's Complete. And you talk about how to write and stuff. And to me, I like that as a way to write the bigger thick book, because I kind of worked on it, took pauses and thought and redirected and put it out, but then I could percolate on it and expand it into a bigger, more adult read book. And I mean, it's still kind of a silly book with, demons and angels and science, and so it hits science fiction and horror and all kinds of things in it. Uh, but it was fun, and it was kind of the book I had wanted to write for 20 years. And you know, I think a lot of times for people, the jobs get scary because they seem so big. And people always say, take baby steps, take baby steps. So those little books were kind of my baby steps.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to approach it, and it helped me get that book. So that's actually one of my favorite books. The one I did, of course, on the 5 minutes of relaxation, 5 minutes a day with wisdom of the United States. That my other half pushed me to do 365 sayings, which I'm happy with that book too. Those are some of my more favorite books. Uh, so that's a method that worked quite well for me. I have some other books I wrote that I'll talk about in a second. So yourself, how do you feel about that process? Have you used that in your life also? Just to
Yeah.
be curious.
Actually, I actually have. Well, I'll just kind of sum it up to the what I'm doing with the documentary right now is originally I started filming the mayor of Marana, and I just fell in love with his story. And so all of a sudden I'm listening to this man's amazing story of how he grew up here. And his family was here in the early 1900s, and then how he grew up here. And so anyway, the story goes on, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a whole story itself. So I ended up creating, and I love America. So I created this little series called My Hometown America, and I put him in it now. And I hope to create. I found that there's other things called My Hometown America, but it just felt right. To have it, and I put a different title, but I would like to continue that where I find other amazing people that have, that are like him. And then I did another one with the him and the archaeologist Al Dart. And so then when I got those two together, I thought, okay, so there's another one. So I ended up doing these two. So it was almost like two stepping stones before the actual documentary. Even though I was making the documentary, these other things kind of sidestepped me so I could train to make the documentary.
I was wondering if you're going to say that you made the other shows and then actually they can be all worked together into your
They
full
can.
documentary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what happened. It was like, I'm sitting here. I never planned it though, but I ended up making these and, editing. And then sure enough, these pieces are going to flow together into what I'm doing now. So I totally understand you. And I feel like that's God's way of not letting us, like it's not really the plan, you don't really plan it. It's just like how it steps into being. It's kind of a fun, it's kind of a fun thing. So like, for instance, when you're creating your stories and your books, how they all ended up coming together. I love that. You might hear my dogs. There's coyotes
Well, that's
out.
fine. Yeah, I apologize to the people watching out there because of the time of the show. I had to do this from the office at my one job because I normally work Tuesday night, so I'm doing this right after I got done working. So I'm in
Oh,
the office is nice. The clock doesn't work, but we joked earlier that even a clock that doesn't work is right twice a day. So we're in here for that. But yeah, I'm always surprised at the synchronicity, like how synchronicity works with a lot of things. And like you said, you found out about me. You found out from me, and the woman that you had found out about me from was someone that I had done movie work with before. And I
okay.
put out some feelers about, I interview people, and if people knew people that would be interested in interviewing me, because that's always nice to do. A number of times I will interview people, or they're interview me first, or vice versa, and we do each other because you have a different fan base. You have different
Yeah.
people that pay attention to both and won't necessarily cross over. Uh, Somebody might watch you interview me here that wouldn't watch me interview you on mine, and it's weird how that works out. But
Yeah.
that's why I'm kind of in this with the clock that doesn't work tonight. But I'm glad I'm here though. But I have to admit though too, I sometimes use myself in my books. And Dr. Junks, like I said, that was my gaming name, and it is a multi. So okay, there's the thing too. That was a multi-dimensional story before they started doing all the multi-dimensional stories on the Marvel and the DC movies and stuff. So that
Oh,
concept's been around for a long time. Uh,
yeah. What's interesting is when I was researching you, I did not find well, I'm so glad you mentioned the America book because I was like, is that him? Because you have some different pseudonym type things, like you're saying you have one with your initial, like you've got your name with your initial too. So I'm like, well, it could be different people. I'm glad it
Yeah,
wasn't a
sometimes I throw my initial out there. Lately, I've been using my emails are saying I got commissioned a colonel by the colonel, the governor of Kentucky a couple months ago. So I'm using my colonel and doing martial arts. I do different kinds of martial arts. One of them is Native American, and recently I'd gotten my native dream name, which is Standing Bear, which isn't too bad. At least I didn't become like Wet Otter or something.
oh
But
no, Standing Bear, that's a good one.
so I've used my name John in brackets and Standing Bear Carrots, and I did get my Tibetan Buddhist name also, which is Kunchak Punsak Chungyal, and it's not, it doesn't roll off the tongue real easy, But because when you study different things, you find they give you names that you represent in that area. So those names you'll probably be seeing a little bit more too, along with the normally I've gone over the age with the music and stuff and in sales. I first got the name Crazy John from doing sales, and I don't know if you've ever seen out here in Jersey and New York. There used to be Crazy Eddie's. You will not be undersold, and that was an old commercial line, and that's kind of where I got the name Crazy John from back in the days, selling stuff at Radio Shack. So that's kind of stuck with me and with performing. And some people come up and go, "You're not really that crazy," you know. But in
What was
some
your
ways,
character like? What was your character of Crazy John like when you sold things? Did you have like, was
I
it like
just
a character?
sell people. I talk to people and sell things to people, and it wasn't really a character. It was just me. So they just said, I
Oh,
reminded them of that Crazy Eddie. So that's where
oh,
they got it
nice.
from.
I see we have somebody that's sending a message and saying hello. It looks like Richard. Hello, Richard. I know I've got my phone.
Yeah, I know. Okay, you're looking. Hello.
And I thank everybody for watching. If you're watching, I know a lot of people watch and they don't type in messages. So, and I do want to say, to everyone that is watching or will be watching in the future, we are so thankful to have you here. We are trying to, really build this visual, visual audience. So I'm excited that I think it's moving along really well and have great people like you on, John. So
Well, thank you. I'm glad you have me here. It's I mean, you're easy to talk to and stuff, and I do talk. So sometimes
yeah,
you
I
have to
like
shut me
that.
up.
Well,
Uh,
one of the questions I did want to ask you that I thought was interesting that we had or we had messaged about was for starting up people that are aspiring writers. I think that's such a good question. What would you say or give advice for to an aspiring writer like yourself?
I think I'd go back to the old sayings of jot notes down and write things when you think about them. Like I said about my Dr. John's book, that was something in 20 years of working or more on that. I got the idea, I was doodling, and then you kind of lose, you lose your energy. And I came back to it, and then I was still a little bit writing a big thick book, and I took it, like we said, in baby steps and knocked it out. I mean, you could even maybe write stories on a blog in small amounts. I don't see why you couldn't do that today. Like have a story blog where
Yeah.
you start your story, and whenever you think of the next chapter, you write it on the blog. Blogs are a good way to practice writing. Uh, I do think sometimes everybody has a blog that doesn't really make you a writer, but I think it's a good way to train to be a writer. You
Yeah.
have people that say, "Oh, well, I do this and I do that." And you're like, eh. I used to actually get published in magazines, and I have to admit, there's only one magazine still out there that I used to write for that's still in business. So I feel like maybe I was bad luck for them. But it,
No, it's just weird times now. Or there's not that, everything's gone digital.
but I
Really,
still
things
think
are
it's nice to. Sorry,
things are changing. It's very interesting.
I still think it's nice to try to get your writing actually in print,
Yeah.
because I think, and I don't mean this bad, but there's a lot more fail safes and checks on imprint things for magazines or newspapers. And I've written for magazines, I've written for newspapers, and it's nicer to see it in print, and that you kind of have the feeling that you've actually come along.
Yeah.
I used to write for a bunch of music magazines. There was one out called Shinbone, and it was owned by a newspaper. So sometimes the interviews and articles I would write for Shinbone would actually get published. They'd also use them in the newspapers. They wouldn't tell me about it, but they had paid me for the article. So if they wanted to use it in 3 different newspapers or 3 different things, that was okay.
Hmm. That's
Maybe
pretty
not
neat.
technically. Maybe
Well, it's
not
really
technically.
it's really neat that you've did all that writing when your whole life has been a writer. I mean,
Uh,
pretty
if you read
much.
my IMDb page, I started out with talking about how I started doing a radio show back in the early
Right.
or late '70s, and it is funny because I was originally people told me how I was a terrible writer, and when I went to college, I had to take extra writing courses because they said my writing was horrible, and other people have told that to me at times on and off, and the problem with that is you got to watch is different places want a different writing style.
Hmm.
And I worked for the government. That's what I retired from. I'm an environmental engineer, and I worked for the Energy Office of the state of Pennsylvania before I retired, which I really liked. I worked for the state of Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Resources, Department of Environmental Protection, whatever the name changed to, for 35 years. And you found different bosses in different circumstances when you write in certain ways. And some would tell you how horrible you are, and it'd be like, yeah, I'm a public author, and you're telling me how horrible I write. But it's for it's for the place that they want it written, and then you got to watch that. So people shouldn't feel bad or they shouldn't let their desires and their hopes be diminished by people telling them they're a bad writer, because those people themselves aren't necessarily going to be that great a writer, or you just haven't found your right audience. That's another thing. So that's something to keep in mind. You might not have found. There's lots of books out there that people tried multiple times to get out there, and people didn't publish them, and then they finally found somebody, and it was a big seller. And
Yeah.
so don't take that deterrent. And I tell you, the funniest thing I had done after writing for a bunch of music magazines, I was writing for a real nice high gloss magazine shop magazine called B Magazine. Well, B stood for Baby Boomer. And it was really weird because I come off, driving around the state, interviewing all kinds of bands and writing articles on bands I interviewed and articles about bands you saw, depending on what, the article was like. And the first article I wrote in B Magazine, I can't remember who it was, what band I interviewed. But right after my article was an article on the knee replacement. And I thought, now this really feels weird to be writing about a band in a magazine, and then after you was followed by an article on knee replacement. But I am in my 60s, so I mean, it was kind of funny, and I am a baby boomer, so it was funny to do that. That magazine, of course, is out of print also, but you can still look it up. I think it's bmagazine.com or .org or something like that. But it was a nice magazine to write for. It was a high gloss, and that was weird. That was a weird feeling to write a magazine and finally, you know, have an article after it on knee replacement.
Well, but that's probably a good thing. Some people have knee replacements, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
a
I have
good
a hip
thing.
replacement. So I mean, but it was weird when you got to that age and now you're writing for that kind of magazine and you're like, what happened? I was writing for hip on the road magazines to see this band and see that band, and I saw a video. Vanilla Ice has a couple new videos out that he does with some other artists, and it's like, oh, I remember interviewing Vanilla Ice. I liked him. And it's like, and you just think back, and it's like it was funny then to do an article in a magazine with a hip replacement, a knee replacement article afterwards. It's weird how that changes, but that's fun too. And it's funny. One time I interviewed a band, and they didn't like the write, and they said this is like plagiarism. And I said, well, it's a band I interviewed like 4 or 5 times already, and the problem was that other articles I had written on the band and interviews were out there, and my new article for B Magazine was too similar to my own articles. So I was
Oh,
kind of fighting against my own articles, which was a weird experience also. And the trick I did to that was I actually inverted the article. I Instead of ending with the topic I started with that topic and just reversed it. And that made the editor happy because it appeared like a different article. It was still the same article, just reversed, you know.
wow.
Because when you interview somebody, there isn't that much new stuff they have.
Hmm.
If, over 12-year span, if you've interviewed them 5 times, the interview is not going to be too different, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I inverted it, which is another thing for people out there. But that was interesting.
Well, I think it's really cool that you got to do that. I mean, you got to interview all these amazing people and get to go see the bands and write about them. That's really cool.
Well, like I said on the IMDb, I started about talk about starting out doing radio, and back in the day, for those of us that can remember, of course, I always like to say I was 2 at the time. The radio station I started on was on cable, and people go, on cable? What does that mean? It was in the old days where the cable, like, I don't know what's the big one now. Comcast. Everybody knows about Comcast, I think.
Yeah.
So on the cable would not just be TV programming. There'd be radio stations. And like my dad was a person that he'd hook up the cable to the back of his big, huge stereo, speakers the size of kids, and you'd get certain channels. And that's what this channel was on cable. And it was fun. It was interesting. I had some fun sometimes. Sometimes I got yelled at for some pranks I did, but it was enjoyable. And I had worked on a website called oshrradio.com, which was a radio, internet radio station back when that was big. And I now own that. And, but that has changed now. Now that is, if you go to oshrradio.com, it is a entertainment news, because it's kind of changed and there's Spotify out there and everything else. Nobody really wants to go to OSH Radio to listen to songs anymore. Plus, I used to have songs on there on Flash players, and Flash doesn't exist anymore. They got rid of that technology. So now I've made it news, and it's basically self-contained, which is kind of nice. It takes care of a lot of its own work itself. It changes. And
wow. I saw that. I didn't understand. I thought it was like an internet radio station.
Well, that's how it started. And that was my lead into doing interviews. And I would do a lot of audio interviews. Back in the day, before you had all this thing where your phone takes these perfect pictures,
yeah,
I would do, I had a little hand tape recorder, a hand digital tape recorder, a recorder, shall we say, not tapes. I do come from the day of tape recorders. But I would go and interview musicians. I would interview comics. I would even sometimes I'd interview athletes, and I'd have it up on OSH Radio. And sometimes we'd have live shows also, but I'd also have them up there for people to see. And that was a progression with OSH Radio. It went from totally being live to having a live music stream, and then posted interviews that you could access and play when you wanted. So that was the progression there. But with me doing interviews and meeting people, that's how it started with audio. And then it got to the fact where you could easily do video. So then I progressed to video. I used to have a nice little video camera. And but you don't need that anymore. You just need your phone.
It's amazing.
And even some of the movie parts that I've worked on, sometimes, especially during COVID, I call it, you dial in your part. They tell you what they need you to say, what you need to look like, what the setting need to look like, and you would make that up wherever you were, and you do your part, record it on your phone, and send it to them, and then it gets spliced into the movie, and it was like dialing in your part on the movie.
Wow, I mean, that is so cool. That's amazing.
But I know that's sort of your progression too. You went from audio to video, and I've thought about going backwards a little bit, because I've started using Zoom now and paying for Zoom. I used to like to use Skype or just record it myself. And I used to have programming on my computers and stuff, because I had done a bunch of TV shows for a local TV station too, which were fun. I dressed up as a vampire for 7 seasons and host cartoons, and that was fun. But I would edit that stuff myself. So I had editing stuff on my computer to do that with. But now it's easy. But now with doing Zoom, Zoom records it in 2 different ways. It records a video, and it records just an audio. So you could put it out there as a podcast if you wanted to, just as a podcast,
Yeah.
which I'm thinking about doing also, because it seems like you're going backwards, but there's a lot of people that like to drive the car and listen to podcasts and don't want to watch anything.
That is all I listen to. If I'm driving, I don't listen to the radio. And I have a background in radio. In fact, my former husband, who is actually here on our property and works with me, so we do our music and everything. But he has he's always been working in radio for a long time. But it's that, yeah, so I really enjoy just listening to really interesting things when I'm driving. So I think it's a great idea, and I think what you're doing is amazing. You're just like cutting edge, and you've always been cutting edge. I mean, you have been
Yeah,
doing.
but I haven't. I got to push to get myself out there a little bit more. And there's one of the comedians I still talk to occasionally. He said he's in a funny video I did to interview is called Three Men in One Cup. And it was a joke to the Two Girls in a Cup video from years ago. And we're all sitting around with chocolate ice cream and a thing, eating it, talking, and I'm interviewing these two comedians. And the one guy on there I still talk to, and he says, "You were kind of ahead of your time, although, I still don't have the following that you'd hope to. I don't do crazy stuff, and I always try to be nice to people when I interview them. And I think sometimes, I don't know, it always seems to me, I like the win-win. Like if there's something in the news, like I'd interview you, and I know there's something out there that people are busting on you about or coming down on you about. I wouldn't necessarily try to needle you about that. I would not do that because to me, that's not right to do. I interviewed a gentleman that I went down to meet him on one of my journeys recently, Asita Kim, a well-known ninja guy.
I
And
saw
some
that.
people today make fun of him. And I interviewed him after I met him, and I didn't give him a hard time about anything because I don't think there's really anything to give him a hard time about. I find, too, being older and a little bit more mature, that there's things that we did in our day that I found now the young people come along and they look at that and they go, what kind of silly stuff was that they were doing? And they look at us like we're bizarre and knuckleheads. And it was kind of a different day. And to them, it's ridiculous. Like karate promotions in the old days, we do all kinds of crazy breaking and blocks and drive cars over our stomach and hit each other on the stomach with sledgehammers, breaking bricks on your stomach while you're laying on a bed of nails. And I did the needle through the arm and a sword through my side at an event with a lot of people, and we got in trouble for that because they said they didn't like the kids seeing that. But we used to do that crazy kind of stuff, or running and doing a flying kick over top of your car and getting
Well,
pictures
Evil
taken of that and stuff.
Knievel.
Evil Knievel.
He did all kinds of stuff.
But
You know.
people today look back at that and go, well, what did that really have to do with the martial arts?
Oh,
And why did you do that? And it was, well, to get people excited. It got
yeah.
people excited, and they and the breaking is only one aspect of martial arts to focus your energy and break. And that's like the old strongman acts of the old days to get people interested in stuff, ripping the phone book. And there's ways to do it. I mean, there is a slight, should we say, there is a slight illusion, almost a magicianship to it in a way. There is maybe that's not the word I should use. Maybe I should use, it is done as entertainment. Let me put it that way. There
Yeah.
definitely is an entertainment value to that. And I think the people today sometimes look back at the older people that did some of this crazy stuff, and they think the guy was crazy or out there. And I mean, we were out there, but it was a different time. I mean,
Well,
even if you look back, sorry.
think about this, like the Three Stooges and Abbott and Costello and all those, like, you know, what they were doing, slapstick, they people loved that. They loved coming out and to watching these shows with, the vaudeville, and also in a way it's just keeping up with that, right? And because you
Yeah, I
kind
don't
of,
think that stuff would sell today because it would probably be too violent.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but it,
You don't think slamming the knife through your side? I don't know. I think
well, I
that's
don't
pretty
know.
funny
Today
though.
people puncture everything. They got metal through here and metal through here and metal through here and metal through here, and
Oh
I
my god.
mean, so putting a sword through your side and a needle through your arm is not really that
Yeah.
spectacular anymore, if you ask me.
Yeah, exactly.
With all the
Exactly.
piercings people do,
Yeah.
that I'll go back to putting the sword through the side. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's interesting how things change, like we said too. And I don't know how I got off on that subject, but talking about people you interviewed, that was it. And how I think people today don't realize how it's a little different. And I think sometimes they take themselves too seriously today, to tell you the truth. And it was a different time, and they don't realize that. I think that's but I think it was good. I started, like I said, doing that radio show in like '79 when I was at first at college, and that was a fun time. And people, it was just a little different time. And
Wow.
some books I also wrote that I did want to mention that I didn't get to mention was I have my autobiography, which I'm probably going to have to do a next volume 2 of my adventures. But I have in there talking about growing up, and then I went to space in 2014 from Russia in a MiG-29. I went to Mount Everest 6 months out. I climbed the base camp Mount, actually hiked the base camp
Yeah.
Mount Everest
Wait,
six
wait, wait, wait,
months.
wait, wait, wait. So wait, first off, so you kind of like, I went to space. Okay, what does that mean?
Well, I
What
went over to Russia and flew in a Russia fighter jet, which is a MiG-29, which is sort of like our F-16. And what you do is you go up and you hit the edge of space and you just kind of go there and then you come back down. And so you get to see the curvature of the earth, you get to see space. And he did make sure I got sick at the end. I did okay till we were coming in, and he said he wasn't landing right. He cut it and banked it real quick, hit 7.8 G's, which means gravity's like 7.8 times. And I threw up. You don't throw up when you compress, you throw up when you uncompress. But it was interesting to do, and I was surprised because we did it in the morning, and it was in January. Cold's better for the fuel and stuff with the jet. And interesting because when you get up there, and you don't think about it, but it's actually quite bright because of the sun. You don't have the clouds anymore, and you feel like, how when you're in a car on a sunny day and it's just beating through the glass,
yeah.
it was like that up there because there weren't clouds and stuff, and you're in that cockpit. And so the one side it's unbelievably bright, and to the other side it's black. And then
Wow.
you're on the Earth, and that was interesting to me because you don't think about that. Of course, the
Wow.
sun's going to be bright. You're all the way up there, but
That's
there's also the darkness and the
amazing.
bright. So that's
It's amazing. That's amazing you did that.
and I came
You,
back and took a 3.5 hour nap because I felt really horrible after throwing up. But
I mean, I can't even imagine what that would be like. Like that's I want to read that book. I want to get that book. Your
but I just
autobiography.
brushed on that. But then I did the hike to the base camp Mount Everest after my
Yeah.
hip, and that was enjoyable. I went the Tibetan side, so I went on tour through the temple to the temples and stuff where the Dalai Lama used to live first, and then up. I went up that way, and the Chinese side through Tibet, they do have like a 4-wheel drive like buses that take you to the base of the base camp. But me and the one other guy in the group, and the funny thing was he was born with a hip that had some issues. I just had a hip replacement. We're the two that actually hiked it. We actually hiked, and we took a shortcut, which was a stupid idea, but we did that too. And almost fell down it. But if you see on the IMDb, there's a page where I'm kind of like this. You're looking
Yeah.
down. I'm actually on the side. That's where I was slipping. The other guy weighed like 150 at the time. I weighed 250. 150 doesn't move much on the stones like 250 does. So I was kind of like sliding. But that was a fun thing to do. I'm not sure I would do that again. The high elevation, the low atmosphere, the low oxygen. We had a number of people in our group get sick. Some
Yeah.
people didn't make it. So it is interesting. And the night before, we're in what's called the tent camp. And it went down to like -30 overnight because, thin atmosphere. And the next day, by the time we got up to the base camp, it was like 70. We tied our coats around us then and stuff. And
Wow. It
you're
was like
sleeping in a tent,
17. It was like 70 or 17.
70. So a big temperature change because of the thin atmosphere. And we're slept in a like a yurt type thing. It's a tent, but it has a base around it. And they're burning yak dung for heat because everything's off the yak up there. The food, construction, it's all off the yak. So they're burning yak dung. Uh, and then you go outside and they have diesel trucks running because they don't want to turn off because they don't want them to freeze up with the temperature going down. So you run them. So you had that in the air, and the air is already thin, and you're like, oh. So
Oh
that
my
was
goodness.
pleasant. And
Wow.
bathroom facilities in a lot of Tibet and also parts of China are basically holes. And that's
Mm.
interesting too. Um, the,
Yeah. My mom told me about that when she went to Italy and before she passed away. And I thought, what? So yeah, I would imagine in a place like that. Yeah. Well, you know what? This is so amazing. I would love for you to come back again, and where we could actually spend a lot of time talking about this too, because what I think is really important here is the fact, number one, you went all the way up after a hip replacement. I mean,
well, that
I
was
mean,
kind of the idea to prove it to myself I could still do it. And I'll tell you what I found about the hip replacement. I think your muscles get weaker the longer you have the new hip because you cannot work it as hard as you worked your legs before the hip surgery.
hmm,
Like I used to hit the gym real heavy for my legs. I can't do that anymore. And I also can't go running anymore. So I think I'm gotten weaker on the legs instead of, I'm still doing okay at the gym, but it's not the same as when I used to run and do real heavy things and stuff. So that's kind of interesting. But I think after the other thing is too, is before I got my hip replacement, my mom died. So I have found in life, and I think this motivates a lot of people, events in life motivate you. Before I went to space, my dad had died.
mm,
And then I started taking care of my mom, and I had a little money. And I thought, what would I like to do? What did I always have a dream of doing? And then after my mom died, I have to admit, not only sports, but taking care of my mom kind of finished my hip because you're helping a person and moving them around, and that's
yeah.
hard on you. And so that kind of was, both of those were kind of like, you realize life is short and you
Mhm.
want to get something in. And that is, I wouldn't want to mention in this one other book that I have done that's a great one, my kid's book, which is a little kid's book. I don't know if you saw it. It's called Dream It, Do It.
I
And
did see that one.
that also is about basically me and my dreaming about doing things and doing them later on in life. And I called the guy in the book Little Chuck. And really,
Yeah.
I was born. My name was Charles when I was born, so I had a name change later on. My mom got remarried and stuff. So Little Chuck is actually me. And how you dream things and people put you down and say, but
Yeah.
the whole point for that for kids is have your dreams and follow them. But that's for adults too.
Yeah.
Sometimes I talked to this the other day with a gentleman. I don't know who I was talking to that about, but we were talking about bullying, and then it's like when we were kids, they always bullied you, and bullying was quite common. And I don't think I would necessarily be the person I am today if I hadn't gotten bullied.
Mm.
Because of getting bullied, I started taking karate at 6, and although after a while I got to hate karate, my parents signed a contract, and I was locked into doing it. But then I learned that you had to get locked into things, and that built that into my system too. And I'm the kind of person that reacts that when people tell you you can't do it, you have to go out and prove them wrong.
Me too.
But there's other people out there that take it the opposite way, and it crushes their soul.
Yes.
I don't know what makes the difference in people. It's some of it's just what's in you, and it is not very good for people who get crushed because it's wrecks their life. But then there's
Right.
the other people that kind of thrive on it because they want to prove that they can do better than the people think they can do. So,
Yeah.
it's I don't know what the difference is in the brain and the chemistry, and that old thing is nature versus nurture.
Right.
Uh,
Well, we're all on this path, and it's our journey. Sometimes, everyone is on their own journey. So, but I think it's important to inspire and help people and share as much as we can. Like what you're doing is really wonderful, and I love that you incorporate with the small, all ages. It's like you've really taken time to nurture everyone. And I'm sure when you have three schools, you still have three schools now.
I do not. I had a stroke 3 years ago. Had lost this left side for a little bit, but I'm okay. But I'm I'm within reason. I have some weird feelings and sensations and stuff. I'm not like I used to be, but I don't have an active school myself. The last place I taught actively at was a yoga place, and I taught Tai Chi there. I had also done Tai Chi at the Shaolin Temple for a little bit on the same trip when I went to Mount Everest, because I'm over there. I try to combine trips. You know what I mean? And that was quite enjoyable. But mostly now I support one of my head students, Master Tim Warfield, and I'll go to his studio like once a month and oversee a seminar and stuff. And I support him, but I still do my martial arts myself every morning, and so I still am quite active doing that, and I find that as a therapy for me too. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of my therapy, and try to hit the gym every day,
See,
and
this is a new book right here, because you've got, what you're doing now is recovering and working on recovering and just keeping on going. Because I work with people. That's my main. Well, I have so many things, but I work with people that are in pain, and I've done that for a long time. And I know that a person like you and what you're doing would inspire. It's inspiring to people that I could say, this is the book you need to read, because this man's walking his walk. He's living what he does, and you just keep going, and you're helpful to people. So I think that would be a new book, like to think about in the future
well,
about
that's like I said, the chapter 2 of my autobiography, what I did
oh yeah.
after that one. And I
Yeah.
am a big supporter of believing in the win-win methodology, where
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be, I don't have to win, you don't have to lose. We can both win.
Yeah.
We can both
Yeah.
walk out of something with something we want. Like this interview. I got
Yeah.
a nice interview from you, and you got an interview from me, and someday I'd like to return the favor and interview you on my show.
Oh, I'd
And
love
see, I think that's
it'd
great.
be
Like
an
different
honor.
people will watch it, and I'm glad to have been here today. But I think that's a view more people have to take, is the win-win. I think too many people want to always be the flat out winner, and I don't see why you have to be the flat out winner. Everybody can win.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'd like life to be in everything. Everybody win.
Yeah.
It
I
doesn't.
mean, I agree 100%. And that it should be. I mean, it'd be nice. It'd just be nice. But I feel so good. I feel so happy inside.
Well, that's good.
That's
I'm
just what
glad.
I love. I love being able to talk to inspiring people. I really do. And it's my goal to bring inspiration to people through music and through all of this stuff, and the show. So thank you so much, John.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Before we get to say goodnight, could you tell people where they could actually, reach? I know we just put in your name and they can find you, but is there something you'd like to share?
Well, you can put in my name. You can find me. You can go to OSH Radio on YouTube. So it'll be YouTube/OSH Radio. And that is Old Schoolhouse, is what it stands for. Radio, because originally it was in an old schoolhouse. And that's there. But you can look up you can go to johncarrots.com, which is my health blog, crazyjohncarrots.com, which is my travel blog. And both of them actually you will see takes you to oshradio.com
Yeah.
extension. oshradio.com itself right now is a news. You can get on there and see entertainment news, what people are doing. And that can also tell you what that's the name you look for on YouTube, where I have 16 years worth of interviews and videos of bands. I think the very first one from 16 years ago is one of my son playing with his old band in high school at an ice skating rink. So my son also Justin Carrots does music, so you can look that up and check that out.
Oh,
And
cool.
so plug him too there, just Justin
Yeah.
instead of John. But yeah, if you search on John Carrots, a bunch of crazy stuff comes up. My IMDb page comes up, which is you can see a lot of the crazy movies I've worked on. Like I always like to joke about my Werewolves in Heat movie, which has Ron Jeremy has a bit part in that, and it's like I do. Sometimes I'm just producing. Sometimes I just do, assistant, like a production assistant. Which can be anything from making phone calls to raising money to sometimes I do bit parts. I've done a stunt work on one. I've done technical advising on 2 space movies, and so I've done a bunch of stuff. But it's
You're
fun just to
so,
be involved in these
yeah.
crazy get out there and take a look. I'm out there. I'm not hidden. I have had times in my life where I've gone cold turkey off of Facebook. Sometimes I find Facebook can get a little weird, especially when coming off of when I used to be in the band real actively, and we used to be playing all the time. You'd start getting people leaving messages and saying things, and some people don't understand that it's not people you don't know. It's just some weirdo out there saying stuff,
Yeah.
and that kind of makes trouble for your real life. So I kind of gone cold turkey off of them a couple times already. So
Yeah.
right now I kind of block people, not letting people make all kinds of comments and stuff on the page or post. You don't want people putting who knows what on your page. So
Yeah. Honestly, I don't. I just got a flood of people like for the show. I just put the thing together for the Facebook page, and I'm like, oh my god, it's like flooded with people, and I'm like, but I don't know them, so I'm usually very private. And I'm like, what? Like, and then that with that comes some bad things with a lot
yeah,
of
you
these
gotta
people.
watch people, and there's fake people out there too. Oh, I
Oh,
want to be your friend. Can't we be friends? It's like,
yeah.
yeah, who are you really? And I love the people that say, where are you located? What do you do? And that's like, oh, sorry, doing because that means that you're trying to scam me, and you don't take time to
Yeah.
even read the stuff that's there about me. You're just mass
They're all
spamming,
nuts.
scamming, and it's
I'm
like.
like, beep.
And I've even said to people, if you're going to try and scam people, you should at least read more and learn more about your mark. Because or you have guys that call you dear and oh, you're such a beautiful sweetie. It's like I'm a guy, and there's a guy telling you this. It's like okay.
I know
Or you
it's
can see the
insane.
mixed names where they have a picture of a girl and a guy's name, and it's
Yeah.
because they're a foreign person and they don't understand.
They're
And
tricky. I don't like tricky people. They are not win-win. I don't like them. They're
no, they're not
lose-lose.
win-win.
uh anyway, I look forward to having you back on. We can talk some more sometime in the very near future.
Yes, it'd be good to let me know when you'd like me to interview you, and
Oh,
then I'll let you talk as much as I did today. Sorry, I talked more than I
okay.
probably should have, but
All
you
right.
get me
Well,
rolling, and
it would be awesome. I look forward to that. So I definitely want to say thank you to you, John.
thank you.
And I thank you to Stan Fikes, our producer. And I want to say prayers for Sarah, who is on one of the other shows on this network, on Webb Radio Network. And I just love her so much. And she's in the hospital right now. We just want to say prayers for her. And I say, God bless everyone and everything out there. And I hope everyone has a great night. And thank you to our sponsor, Caveman Fabrications. Anything you want to say before we say good night, John? John Boy?
Thank you to you and everybody for making this possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.